Good morning, beloved. Oh, Mama Kitty, she seems to think it must be Friday here. Are you getting proactive and getting attention? Some folks are asking me, what are you talking about Friday when you're talking to the cat? Well, we've made special allowances for the cat to have a little bit more time sitting on my lap on Fridays, but she does tend to interrupt the show. She has a sense of entitlement that is breathtaking if I don't do what she wants. Someone mentioned in the comments yesterday, I'm surprised that a guy like you would have a cat, would own a cat. And I said, well, do you really ever own a cat? I should. My next cat, I think I'm going to name Aslan because they are not tame animals, to be sure. Woke up this morning to a chilly 18 degrees, very cold, no snow. Man, it is absolutely depressing. We have a big week ahead of us, Mama. Oh, wait. You have a nice chair there. Wait, you stay there. It's not Friday. We have a big week. As I said yesterday, my son Jack is in competitive debate, and he has a big competition coming up, a 4-day competition. Mrs. W and him, Lord willing, are leaving tonight, and we'll be joining them tomorrow. So we will be on the road, hopefully, doing our live stream at a normal time tomorrow, Thursday and Friday on the road. Where and when? Or no, I know when. Where? Maybe in my truck. So we'll see. It's going to be a juggling act, but I have put my hand to the plow, and I am planning on being here. Mama, no, if I spoil you, I know what will happen. I'll push you away if you're going to continue that. I uploaded a short this morning that has been somewhat controversial. You know you're over the target when you receive the flak and the shrapnel. And there's just some people that are never going to be able to wake up. You like to think as you go through life that everyone, if you could just reason with folks, if you could just show them the way things are, evidence, proofs, that they would come around to your way of thinking. And that's simply not the case. And it's very frustrating when you see things so clearly. But it really makes me sympathize with our Heavenly Father's predicament. He's been doing the same thing, suffered the same thing. When you think that you think that you're failing because you're not able to reach everyone, or you're not able to show people that things are not as good as you may think, or maybe things should change, or maybe we should look at the world a little bit differently, and they just won't have it. I am encouraged, and we have to remember that even our Heavenly Father lost 1/3 of his very own. Now, in the story, in the Old Testament, the story of Lucifer is told. And Lucifer means lumen, or light bearer, is what it stands for. The Old Testament tells us that he was created as one of God's most perfect creations, one of the most beautiful angels in his family, and was even granted the honor of being right standing and covering the throne of the Almighty himself. Made him perfect, as God said, perfect in all of his ways, and it even goes on to give the impression that he was almost a walking, talking musical instrument, which is very interesting. The more we see, I think musicians can sympathize with this. Those people that have the gift of music, they're almost compelled to play. They just can't help themselves. It's something that God has put in them that is just instinctual. And that's why they find each other. They go out and they find each other, and they put together little bands, and they play, and they even do it for free. That's what their heart is. They have to express themselves in that way through their music. And I get that. I don't play a musical instrument per se, but I understand. I can definitely feel it. It gives the impression that music is, it's very clearly dictated in the good book that music is going to be among the highest forms of worship, and that God has made us that way. So he was created with every advantage, made even more beautiful than anyone else, and even him being in that perfect environment, being in the presence of the Almighty, still was overcome by pride and fell. And I guess we have to, you're just not going to give up, are you? Is it going to be Wednesday and Friday? If you start clawing me, if you give me the claw, I will put you out. So I guess I know that there's been a lot of heartache. A lot of folks, I've heard from them. I know families that have tried their best to raise their children the best that they could, and even though they did everything within their power, their children, they still lost them, or they rebelled, or they turned into the prodigal. And that can be very discouraging. You can look back and think, well, what have I done wrong, and what could I have done better? It's just the way that it is. That's the risk that we take. That's the risk that God takes when we grant a creature or a family member or a loved one free will. That's why beloved means something. That's why it's so important. And that's why God allows us to go off the rails and to go out and make mistakes, because he doesn't want automatons. I mean, those of you who have children can probably relate to this. I mean, if you could create your children and program them to always say the right thing and always do exactly what you told them to do, like a wind-up toy, and you wind them up in the back and they say, oh, I love you, Daddy, and your little daughter, I love you, and you know, does it mean anything? No, it doesn't mean anything. She's been programmed, he's been programmed to do it. Yes, they'll say the words, they'll mouth the words, but does it mean anything? The only reason the love of your children and the love of your daughter or your son means anything is when they express it because they want to, not because they have to. They're not forced to do it. And that really touches upon the free will that God gives us. And that's a double-edged sword, because if you have the will to love, you have the will to hate as well. And yeah, I don't know where I'm going. I lost my train of thought. Let us light the lantern. Mama, it's not Friday. I cannot indulge you. I know how you are. I give you an inch and you take a mile. Oh, I think the point we were getting at was the controversial short video that I put up today. I made the comment that it seems to me that there are three types of people that pretty much everyone falls into one of these three categories. There may be subcategories, there may be outliers, but for the most part, I think this rings true. The first type of person is the person that is willing to, maybe the gullible person, or maybe the trusting person. You know, it depends on how you look at it. The first type of person is willing to listen and believe anything that they're told. Comes from, we know people like that, comes from the government, comes from CNN, Fox News, whatever, comes from pastors, comes from employers. They just automatically believe, they never question anything, they just go with the narrative. And they go through life, and maybe their way is the happier way in this difficult life that we go through, because they don't ever have to really push against the system. They're just moved along with the stream and the current, and they don't have to think too much, they don't have to be involved too much. They just have to just get by the best they can in the environment that they have. And I think they're the lesser of the evil. They're just going along and they just do what they do. We've always had that sort of people, the followers. And then we have what I think is the most dangerous and the most insidious group, and that would be the second type. And that's the folks that hear the narrative, hear what they're being told, know instinctively that it's not right, know instinctively that it's wrong, but are unwilling to stand up for their values or stand up against evil or wrong because of fear. Fear of losing face, fear of losing finances, fear of losing respect, friends, family, position, money, all those things. Just following orders. We saw that, right? We saw that during the Nuremberg trial. These people thought that that was going to be a defense, just following orders. Well, that's the worst of people, and that's unfortunately the ones that enable the real tyrants in the world to prosper. Because these people know, and most of the time these people are in positions of some sort of power or authority, doctors, judges, attorneys, cops, soldiers, where they have a position or they're in a position where they can affect people's lives either positively or negatively in a great way. Those are the most dangerous type of people, because they, going against what they know to be right, going against their human nature, going against the messages or the God speaking through the Holy Spirit because they're too fearful to push against it. They're unwilling to do what is right because they're too afraid of losing their income or their position or their authority. And those are the people that are the most dangerous that we're going to come in contact with because they're the ones that enable, as I said, the tyrants to survive and to persecute the third group. You know, if you find yourself in that position right now, if you're watching, if you are law enforcement, if you are a doctor, if you are a judge, an attorney, and you are pushing aside what you know to be right. If you are a cop and you're watching people being taken advantage of, being abused, preyed upon, if you're a doctor and you're performing particular procedures, you know what they are, that are go against what you know to be right, but you realize that if you were to speak up or you were to do something, that you would lose your income, you would lose everything, your entire career, and be thrown out, but you're unwilling to do it because of the fear of that, you fall in that category. If you're a judge that realizes the injustices that are coming before you in family courts, and yet you continue to profit off of these things, through the misery and suffering of the folks that come before the bench, and you are an unjust judge. You know, these things are going to be, God is going to take a very dim view of these things. And this is going to be something that you'll have to face in the final days. And if you continue down that road and you don't stand for what's right, and if indeed that everything turns against you, where the people fight back and get victory over tyranny, you will be held accountable for the decisions that you've made, the medical procedures that you've allowed to happen or that you participated in yourself. As a cop, the people that you've abused or taken advantage of when you know that they didn't have anything and towing that car was going to make the difference between them eating and not eating or losing their job or losing their house. You know, God is watching. The books are open, and everything that's spoken and everything that you do is written down, and you will give an account for that these days. The third type of person is the person that hears the lies, hears the manipulation, and refuses to go against his conscience, refuses to go against what he knows to be right. Even if it means being ostracized from family, being ostracized from community, losing your job, losing your children, losing your marriage. The third type is willing to go to the grave rather than kneel or compromise what he knows to be right. And throughout history, the real war, the real battle has been between the second and the third type. And it's only the third type that has the ability, that's willing to give up everything and stand for what's right, that is going to allow us to make changes in this world or to make things correct. My plea to you is if you find yourself in that second category and you call yourself a man of God, and yet you continue to go against what you know to be right, human rights, natural rights, because of fear of your job, career, respect, what have you, I encourage you to repent of that. If you know something that is being done that is a crime against humanity, a crime against God's people, and you are not speaking up, you are complicit. Even though you may not agree with it, maybe you're trying to do what you can do, you are complicit. And you will pay the penalty for that. And people are going to remember. People are watching, and they know what you've done. I just encourage you to join the good guys. If you know something, if you can out something and out an injustice, if you can get rid of someone or expose someone who is on the wrong side of humanity, on the wrong side of God, you have a great obligation to do that, and I encourage you to do so. Let us light the lantern. I had many people reminding me this morning that I'm bringing too many negative ways, or too many negative vibes, too much negativity. But But how can you be positive when people's lives are being ruined, when people are being trod upon? And how can you be joyful and happy when there's so much injustice? For the life of me, I just cannot understand how many people living in this current environment with what's going on right now cannot see how desperate the situation is getting. Don't you realize that something is wrong when the number one fear and anxiety that people are experiencing in this country is just trying to keep a roof over their head, food in their belly, clothing on their children, when that is out of reach now for how many people? My son's generation, watch TikTok, video after video after video. Young people in their 20s and 30s about to be thrown out, about to be on the street, working multiple jobs. What hope could you have when you can't even provide basic shelter for yourself, when a home is not affordable, when gas is unaffordable, when food is unaffordable? You don't think something's wrong? You don't see the disparagement, don't you see the division of wealth? Don't you see that it's the haves and have-nots? And yet you continue to support these companies, watching their movies, watching their football games. $30 pumps. Here we go. Come on now. Oh, the delay. That was pretty good. I think we're getting this down here. Okay, Mom, are you going to leave me alone? I'll bring you back into the fold here if you stop trying to crawl on my lap. Okay. All right, gentlemen, let us jump into it. It is Wednesday. It's time to pick up the pace here. All right, we have a member message. Always like member messages. These are curated from Mr. Overton, and he picks the good stuff here. Robert Newton has been with us for 12 months. Shout out to you, Robert. Robert has a comment. He says, Cody, I'm a high school wrestling coach, and I have 10 senior wrestlers and want to purchase them a gift for their high school graduation. Any ideas? Oh, I bet I could come up with a thing or two. I guess the first thing I need to know is what's your budget? What is your budget? You want to give them something, that's a good question. You want to give them something that they will remember you by. Not just something that will just be consumed or broken or wore out. You want to have something that they could have the rest of their life. Man, I'm thinking like a pocket knife, but you might get into trouble. I don't know what the politics are of school. What was appropriate back in the day is probably not appropriate now. You give those boys a pocket knife, and they probably string you up and fire you for terrorism charge or something like that. Hey, let me know. Let me know what. Maybe Luke can get it over to me. Let me know what your budget is, and let me think upon that. And also chime in, middlemen. We have a brain trust. My 11 middlemen. They're very smart, and they can help us with this. So when you give us your budget, then we can speak to this, and I'll be kind of thinking on this as I'm going. Mr. Brian M., member for 1 year. Well, shout out to you also, Robert, for being a coach and mentoring these boys. This is very good. I've heard a statistic, I think, quote, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it 80% of teachers are female in the public schools? I've always been a big advocate. I do not think that boys and girls should be educated together. I think that there should be a division. I think they should be separated. Boys and girls learn differently. Girls, from my experience, are able to sit down for hours on end and focus on their studies and inside, and that's the way they learn, and there's nothing wrong with that. We just learn differently. But boys, that's very difficult for a lot of them, especially boys that have high energy. And what seems to happen is they are forcing these boys to learn in in an environment that just doesn't work for them. And I just don't think that female teachers are the best place to do that. Boys should be outside. Boys should be able to learn while they're burning off energy and have a completely different sort of education than men. But shout out to you, Robert, for being in there in the trenches. It's got to be extremely difficult working within the confines of public school and all of the wokeness and everything that you must have to deal with. I wrestled when I was in school. My dad wrestled when he was in school. Jack wrestled as well. And that was a very positive experience for me, to be able to be around, have a good coach. My wrestling coach had a tremendous impact on me. Having a team like that, it was very, very important. And I would imagine out of these 10 boys that you have, some of them probably don't have. Statistics would prove out probably half of them or more don't have a positive role model in their home, and you have stepped in there to do that. So my respect. Shout out to you, and thank you for being here. We have a super chat from Brian M., member for 1 year, spill time. 1 week spill free is just odd. Yeah, it's unnatural. It is unnatural. How can we raise the bar to get back to our nature here? I don't know. You see, I learn my lessons slow. That's always been my mantra. But I do learn them. It just takes me longer than most men. We have a member message from Logan Carnes. Shout out, Logan. And Logan's been a member with us for 3 months. Welcome, Logan. It's good to see you here. He says, hope all of you are staying well. Unlike me, I'm very sick and still pushing through the day. Stay well, and stay safe, everyone. Yeah, man, that's rough when you have to go to work that way. I'll tell you, back to the cold showers, of course I gotta keep going on with that. I had a good cold shower this morning, and I've been noticing something that has been unusual lately. And this was before I started doing the cold showers, but for some reason, every morning when I wake up now, my ears are ringing. I got a buzzing or ringing in my ears, nonstop. Tinnitus, what people call it. But Mrs. W has had the same thing, and I think it very unusual that it happened to both of us at the same time. We tried to think, have we changed anything in our home or diet? No, not really. Everything's pretty much been the same as it's always been. We wondered, is it something with 5G? Is it something with having phones on the nightstand? So I put them in Faraday bags when we went to sleep, and that doesn't seem to change anything. But every morning, for quite some time, I guess it's really been since I started the live streams, I wake up just completely congested. We've tried changing the temperature in the room. We've had the ducts in the house cleaned. We keep a clean house. I don't think there's anything like that, but just can't breathe through my nose, congested like a sinus infection, and a headache. Just an annoying headache in the top of my head every morning, where you just feel terrible, right? And what I have found, I don't know what's causing it, but what I find is I'll get up and start getting into my workout, even though I don't want to. My head's pounding, and I just kind of feel crummy. And from doing my 5-minute workout and then jumping in and doing my 3-minute cold shower, I come out of there completely healed from all of it. Like no congestion, clear sinuses, no headache. It's pretty impressive. So I don't know what the cause of all of this is, but the remedy seems to be quite simple. I jump in that cold shower, do my stretching, go through my Wim Hof breathing method, and I come right into the live stream and I actually feel pretty good. But I don't know what this is all about. I told Mrs. W, I've been really thinking a lot lately about the importance of maybe disconnecting from the busy lives that we have a little bit. Not to check out and become a weirdo, but just separating yourself from it. If you can't get away from the internet and the cell phone and all of these obligations that just scream at you all day long, and it can be just a lot of unfinished projects around the house, or if you're embroiled in a remodel, don't underestimate the stress that causes. Or just having a messy home or a messy room or a disorganized closet. All these things, you may not think that they weigh on you, or it may not have a lot of effect on you, but they do. They occupy your mind. And can you ever really be at peace in your home when you're surrounded by chaos, mess, clutter, unfinished projects, I say you can't. I find it very, very difficult. Mrs. W and I have always kind of made a point when we've been embroiled in big remodels or when our lives get super, super busy to sometimes you just got to get away, even if it's just a half hour, just go up to the mountains, just far enough where your cell phones won't work, and just be up there. Sometimes even just a day is enough. It forces you to relax. It forces you to relax because even though you know there are all these things that need doing, there's no point of worrying about it because you're not going to do them when you're up at the lake. You can't do them, so you might as well stop worrying about it. But I was talking to her this morning, waking up with stuffy nose and congestion and the headache every morning. It'd be interesting to see, is this environmental? Is this something in the home? Is this something, who knows what it is? But I wonder if it wouldn't be good for a guy to have kind of once a month or so, to be very deliberate and just get away from that. Get away from that. I was wondering, this summer when it cools out, when it heats, or when it warms up a little bit, maybe I'll go down by the river, set up the tent, set up the old elk hunting tent, and go down there and just make a habit of sleeping down there for a couple nights. Take Mrs. W and I, we go down there, no internet, separate from all of the things of the house, and I wonder if that would help. I wonder if that would help. There seems to be precedence for that, we need to move on. You get ranting here. We have a super chat from our friend, Mr. Dr. Pepper. Member for 2 years. Welcome, Dr. Pepper. He says, how can you live as type 3, rebellious with kids when others feel repercussions of your actions? Yeah. I can sympathize with that. I think what Dr. Pepper is saying here is that, let's say that you come to the realization that God is awakening you of the condition that we're in, and how terrible it is. And you start to become aware of this situation, and yet you're living with your children, living with your spouse, maybe your family members, and they have not experienced this awakening. You can come off as a kook. You can come off, they'll throw labels on you, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, this and that, or, and you see a lot of women doing that. Oh, my father, he's went crazy, he's listening to Fox News, and, he's talking about all these conspiracies, and he's a nut, and that drives a huge wedge between the family. And these girls or family members, they think that they're right, still in the matrix, still plugged in, have no idea what's going on, consuming regular media or not consuming anything at all, just living in a bubble and going through their life and just not caring because they're the first type of people. It's going to drive a wedge between you and them. And there's just no other way around it. I can't give you an explanation because Christ told us that this was going to happen. He said, if you're not willing to leave mother, daughter, husband, wife, family members for the gospel's sake, then you're not worthy of me. As harsh as that may sound, that's really a prophecy for the end times. That's just the way that it's going to be. The story we talked about yesterday of John Bunyan's book, The Pilgrim's Progress, that is addressed in the very first chapter. Now, The Pilgrim's Progress is an allegory of the Christian walk, of what it's like from the time that you become aware of your condition. You become aware that you are burdened by sin and that the wages of sin are death, and that if you continue on this particular path, then your fate is destruction. That's where you start. When you become aware that you are in this condition and you realize you want to get out of it, that's when you start turning towards God and you start learning these truths. Well, as you turn away from this and you're learning these truths, the first thing that you want to do is to share them with your loved ones, because you don't want them to be destroyed or lost either. You want to bring them along. You are a father, you're a protector. You want them to understand the truths that God has revealed to you. But it's rare that they're going to want to hear those truths. They're going to not want to hear them, and they're going to despise you, the crabs in the bucket. The crabs don't want the bucket. The other crabs don't want you to escape. When you get a claw up there on the rim and you get a hold and you start to lever yourself out, are they helping by pushing you and encouraging you to get out of the bucket and be free in the open sea? They are not. They're dragging you back down because it's a reminder of them that there is an obligation, that they're going to have to make a decision, and there's going to be something expected of them. And the whole time that they live in their ignorance, there is nothing expected of them. There is no, they can simply just be lethargic and lazy. And that's our nature, is to make ourselves comfortable and insulate ourselves from difficulty as much as possible. I mean, this is just the way things are, right? And it's very frustrating, and that's covered in that first chapter. When Christian, the lead character in the Pilgrim's Progress, realizes his condition and he wants to get out of it, and the Christian walk or the path to God is told of him by him going on this great journey, he tries to bring his family along, tries to tell his friends and neighbors, but they alienate him. They call him a kook and a crazy person. They withdraw from him and make him feel unwelcome in his own house. And the only thing that he can do is to leaving his family and friends all behind. And that allegory is also played out in Abraham's story, when God called Abraham out of his homeland, away from his family. God knew that they would drag him down. They knew that he wouldn't be able to function and to do what needed to be done to bring in the patriarchs and ultimately the progenitors of Christ himself. He knew that it was going to be a hindrance to Abraham, and he removed him from that situation, pulled him out, sent one family member with him, Lot, and that's the way that it was. So that's how God works with us. The people are just not going to see it. That's the burden of free will that we have to deal with. So, you have to have a tendency. We have to be very careful with this. There's an old saying that there's nothing. The greatest zealot is a new convert, whatever that may be. You find something that you're excited about and you want to share it with everyone, and you blow everyone out. You blow everyone out because of your enthusiasm. And if you have not been a stable person in the past and have got excited about things only to not follow through, then you've ruined your credibility, as we're so fond of saying, right? So, all you can do is to pray for your children and try to make sure that you really walk the walk, that you are not professing yourself to have this new light, to be now following the way, following Jesus. They're watching you, and they're waiting for you to slip up. So you need to be doing it better and faster than you ever did before. You need to be really careful of what you say and do, because they're watching. And the only hope you have, if they're not willing to hear you and join you or investigate themselves, is to lead by example. And it's more times than not, especially with children, if you are consistent by leading with that example, you're able to control your temper, able to be honest in your dealings, kind to people, not gossiping, following the golden rule, following the commandments the best you can. It's often that is the strongest proof of the gospel. For me, the strongest proof that God is real is in the changed lives of people that I've known that were bad people, that were evil people, that were able to make a complete 180 change their life miraculously, sometimes overnight. That's a very powerful testimony. That's why testimonies are the best way to share the gospel. And a testimony is not preaching at anyone, not judging anyone, but sharing what God has done for you and how he's changed your life for a positive way. A personal testimony is a very powerful thing. But I understand, Dr. Pepper. Yeah, there will be repercussions. There will be repercussions. Even Christ himself had to deal with it. When he started preaching, his ministry only lasted about 3.5 years. And his own family had a hard time accepting him being the Messiah. They had spent their whole life with him, had seen him as a boy and as a child, and the old saying, the crown sits poorly on acquaintances or friends. Meaning that if you find yourself in an elevated position, it's oftentimes, typically the case, if you were crowned king, that all of your subjects that never knew you, weren't raised with you, didn't get drunk with you in the bar, didn't see all your frailties and weaknesses, they can see you as the regent. They can see you as a lofty king. But your friends, not so. You know, they saw you, they know who you are, and they look at you as putting on airs, and it's hard for them to accept it. You know, a prophet is not without honor, except for in his own kingdom. Same thing goes for the house. We have a super chat from McFadden, and new member, welcome, welcome, who says, good day, any chance you could do a truck medical small bag that can go from truck to pack for the people on a budget, or would you rather have one good bag? Yeah, no, that's an option, and that's what I did for years. I think what McFadden here is talking about is a proper family medical kit is a big investment. I mean, really to do it right, to have a good one that's comprehensive, is going to run you about probably $500 or $600. Now, who's got that type of money to do that twice or three times? So the idea, and you know, many of us kind of fell into this trap early on. I found it extremely frustrating when I was watching Nut and Fancy videos, learning about systems, learning about kits and such. And his philosophy was, if you're going to put together like a survival kit for your truck, do not rob from it. Don't rob from it, because if you rob from it, when you're in need, something's not going to be there. And let's say you have every good intention and you put together an emergency kit for your truck, and you put in a good flashlight in there, and you put in your Leatherman, right? Or maybe a good knife. You know, can you write that stuff off? Can you afford to buy duplicates of all these things? You know, I just don't think that that's realistic, to be honest with you. I used to try to do it, and I did the same thing. And I would need something or go from winter to summer, and then I would rob from the kit. And then when winter came around, rather than just having the winter kit and the summer kit that I could put in and not think twice about it because I'd already done the work, well, I couldn't do that because I'd been robbing stuff out of it because I didn't have duplicates. Unless you're made out of money, I think that that's a foolish way to go. It's just not sustainable. Unless you are a type of person that makes lists and spreadsheets and keeps track of everything, and when you take something, you put it back. I don't think that that's most of us here, to be honest with you. I think the best way to go is to have one and just move it around. Make it portable. Don't lock yourself into anything, and just have it, and so you can use it. And you know, the other thing that's not handy is you take a Leatherman, for example, and put it in a dedicated kit, and when you need it, you know, you find yourself using the wrong tool for the job, or making something more difficult because you don't have the proper tool because you stashed it away somewhere. I just don't know that that's the case. I think you just kind of put together one kit. This is my get home kit. Set it up for winter and summer. You know, there's a few changes you can make that are easy enough. Obviously, you're going to pull water out if you have any stored water in a kit during the winter time, because everything's going to be frozen if you leave it in your car. So there's things like that you need to take into consideration. There's no need to pack rain gear around if you're going on a trip in August. You know, you can take those things out. So have the core kit, the basic kit that is just one. Know what's in it. Use it. Have it available. Use it. Have it in a good bag so things are not so put away that they're difficult to get to. Just put thought in it. And the same thing goes for the medical kit. I think you should buy one good kit. Spend the money, get a really good kit, and then you just have that with you. And we did that for years, and that's basically what we do now, kind of. I have people send me free stuff, so I've got a whole bunch of multiples, so it's a little bit different for me. Refuge Medical sends me stuff because to say thank you, because I've been trying to help them get the word out because they're a good company. AMP3, they send me stuff because they're for the same reason. So I do have multiples, but before that, after I kind of got away from the idea of having dedicated things that just stick here and go there, it goes with me. So just get in the habit. Most of the time, you're just going to leave it in your truck. You'll leave your medical kit in your truck. You have an emergency in the house, like we did with the Sweet Loaf the other day when she got something in her eye. It's not that much difference of going into the garage or going into your car. You know it's there, so just keep it there. If you don't keep it there, it's unlikely that every time you come in and out of the car, you know, especially if you've got kids and you're trying to carry blankets and coats and baby bags and all this stuff, it's unlikely that you're always going to remember to keep that in your rig. So I really think that the truck for Proho needs to be kind of the catch-all bailout bag, that's your reservoir for the things that are emergencies. You need a flashlight, you know it's going to be there. You need a trenching tool, you know it's going to be there. You know, there's a lot of the new trucks, even my granddad, you know, he never had the modern truck like we have today with all of the great storage. You know, I can flip up the back seats in my Super Duty, and goodness, I can prepare for the end of the world just what I store underneath the seats of there, let alone, you know, other places and cubbies and center console and such. But he always kind of set his truck up that way, and there's plenty of room in the back seat, you know, behind the seat, under the seat. Just get yourself some smart bags. Those Home Depot zipper bags that I've bought for years, they're affordable. Throw those back there, label them, and just, it's the most common, you're more likely to need your first aid kit on the road in your car than any place else. I have always carried them in my car, and it's probably 75% of the time that I've gotten it out to deal with some sort of an emergency or need a Band-Aid or something has been in my car. Rolling up on a car accident, going at an event where some kid threw a rock at another kid and they're bleeding all over the place. All those situations, I've been very glad to have it in the car. And so that's kind of the philosophy that I would do. But yeah, I can do that, McFadden. I can show you the kit. I'll have to figure out how to do that. Most people are not interested in those things, but I'll try to figure out a way to do that, or at least make a suggestion. Thank you for your generosity, McFadden. Our friend Andrew Rouse, and new member, welcome. Thank you for your generosity as well. He says, do you believe there are ghosts? Ghosts and apparitions? I certainly do, but I don't, they're not ghosts. You know, we have, there's two things going on. You know, there is good and evil in this world. There is the adversary, that devil and Satan, and there is God. And the war, or the great controversy that is taking place, is the war of good and evil, fighting for the hearts and minds of God's children. You know, we tend to look upon our own situation here like we're the center of the earth and we're the only thing that is taking place. But the way I would encourage you to look at it, if we're going to zoom out a little bit, let's zoom out beyond our own personal problems here, our fall, or our living in this sinful state that we were never intended to live in. We have to remember that before all of this, before our problems, there was a greater problem in the universe, and that was when Satan rebelled against God. Now, God in his kingdom was surrounded by his family, the angels that he created. Were there other beings? You know, most likely. Are we the only people or the only creature that God has created in the universe? I say that that's very unlikely. But if we read and study the book of Job, we can certainly come away with the impression that we are the only one that has rebelled against him, that all of them have always been in harmony with him, that haven't accused him of being unjust. When Lucifer was created, as I said, he was created perfect in all of his ways, the most beautiful of all the angels. But the good book tells us that pride entered his heart, and he began to look upon God with envy, and thought so much of himself that he thought, well, I want to be like God. And he began to grumble and to complain and make comments behind God's back. And he was so convincing in his grumbling and his complaining and his accusations that God was not being fair. Maybe he was complaining God was being unjust. Maybe he was complaining that God was keeping something from you, that he's greedy, keeping it to himself, so that if you knew the truth that you could be like him, but he's keeping a secret from you. Well, this is the first time anyone had ever lied. The good book tells us that the father of lies was Lucifer. And we can imply from that there was no dishonesty in God's family until it was introduced by this one created angel. And the ridiculousness of a created being wanting to usurp or replace its creator it's ridiculous. But he did it nonetheless. Well, in the background, he was so convincing that he convinced, as the good book tells us, 1/3 of God's family to side with him. And there became a huge problem. 1/3 of the angels sided with Lucifer. Yes, we agree that God is not as he says he is. He's not honest. He is probably keeping something from us, and we are going to rebel. Well, there were still 2/3 that were still on God's side, correct? But among the 2/3, do you think there were any that were sitting on the fence, that were questioning? Yeah, he makes a good point. But they were unwilling to go that far. They were unwilling to cross the Rubicon as the 1/3 had. So that puts God in a very difficult position. What does he do? Does he stamp out the rebellion? Well, he can't really do that, can he? He has to let it fester. He has to let it play out. Well, why? Why doesn't he just make it go away so that we don't have this sin problem, that the rest of the onlooking universe isn't being affected by this rebellion? Well, he could have done that. Snapped his fingers, all of the rebels are gone, up in smoke, vanished, thrown into the pit, whatever. Problem solved, right? Now, the problem is not solved. Because of the 2/3 that were remaining, the ones that were maybe sitting on the fence, what did they just learn? Ah, I see how he is. Either we do what you say, we just blindly follow you, never question anything you say, or you'll destroy us. That's how it is. Could God allow that to happen? How long before the next rebellion would spring up, and the next, and the next, and the next? God did not destroy the rebels, but cast them out of heaven and segregated them. The good book tells us he put them down onto the earth, where we're here now, but kept them. They were limited. They didn't have access to everyone. They were allowed to live, they were allowed to be, but they had lost their position to be next to him and to be in the kingdom. But he didn't destroy them. Well, this was important because what he had to do is he had to let this rebellion play out. And he had to, so the onlooking universe, the 2/3 that did not rebel, perhaps the entire universe, perhaps an innumerable number of other beings or creatures that he had created that had not rebelled from him. They're also looking on this rebellion. This is a theater. God sits in the dock, so to speak. Sits accused of being unjust, unworthy to be God. That was the accusation that the devil raised upon him, or towards him. So when man and woman were introduced and God created them in our own image, there was this question still looming in the background. He put them on the planet, put them on earth. Evil's on the earth as well. But he did not let evil have complete access to them. Kept them safe. They were innocent. They didn't know what lies were. They didn't know what sins were. They were created in the very image of God, and yet still the adversary is down there. He confined it, and the story tells us in the allegory, to the tree. And he warned them when he put them down there, of all the trees in the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, or you will die. So all of the rebellion and everything in this allegory was contained in a particular area. It was there. It had to be. He couldn't just snuff it out, or he would look like a tyrant, and the question wouldn't be answered. Who's right, the adversary or God? Because there are still people asking this question. This is playing out. He warned them, and we know the story. Of course, they went and ate of the tree. They went to a place they were not supposed to go, and this whole problem started the whole problem that we are here sitting with. Now the whole onlooking universe and everything is watching this all play out. And when we come through the end of it, the question will be answered. We can see how the adversary ran his government, how he destroyed God's children, how he made their lives miserable, how he introduced all of the wickedness into the world, all these things against what God wanted, all against his plan. And then we have the other side of God striving through the ages of coming up with solutions and plans and trying to help his children, providing his own son to save them through this difficult time. While the whole time everyone is looking on and watching all this, the unfallen angels and all of the other created beings that are watching, And it seems to me that when we come through this, when it runs its course and it all comes to a head, everyone will be able to clearly see. God won't have to have said anything, but there'll be an agreement. We saw the way you run your government, the way you treat your people, the way you respect your created beings and your creatures. We also saw the way the adversary who told us that his way was better, how he treated them and how he destroyed them, and the wickedness that he brought and the destruction and the misery in the world. We will all be able to come to an agreement without God punishing anyone, without forcing someone to bend the knee. We will all come to the agreement that, God, your way is best. And we will have the ability to be truly free. And if in the future, when we're in the kingdom, if ever the rebellion ever rises again, or anyone ever questions the righteousness or the fairness of God, all they'll have to do is to hold up those hands. And what will we see? The nail prints. That's why God will always have these, that he will still bear the marks, the nails in his hand, the nails in his feet, the wound in his side. That will, all I have to do is point to that. We tried that. This is what happened. And the question will be answered once and for all, and hopefully will never have to be dealt with again. So this is a long answer to your question, are there ghosts? There are things that will manifest, that have manifested in the past, that people see, that are not necessarily ghosts, but they are the wickedness that comes from these fallen angels. They have authority and they have a power to do so many things. God allows them to do and manifest in certain ways, and always has. And whether they manifest in a ghost, an aberration, or a spirit, or a false god like a Baal or an Ashtoreth, all of these things, the false gods that people worshipped, and the Zeuses and the Apollos and all of that, these were not other gods, in my opinion. They were Satan masquerading as this way, masquerading in a way and deceiving and fooling people. So I believe that people see things. I have experienced, I've felt, I've been in the presence of true evil, and I can tell you, you don't want any part of it. It's so terrifying you almost lose the will to live. And this is what people see. There will be all sorts of manifestations, and we need to be very careful in the future because they're going to be ramping up. There's going to be more and more of them. As God's protection, this country started as a Christian nation mostly. And as we've turned away from God and pushed his commandments out of the schools and pushed prayer out of the schools and have adopted these abominations of the adversary, God's hand of protection is being lifted off of this country, and we're going to see more and more of this. The spirit world cannot break into our world if we're covered by the blood of Christ, if we're covered by have the protection of Christ. But if we turn away from him, you shouldn't be messing with him. But people do nonetheless, and they will come back and tell you, I heard from a loved one that is long since passed, and I know it's true because they were able to share information that no one else would know, that only me and this person would know, intimate information. So this is a proof that there is an afterlife. This is a proof that my loved ones are still speaking to us. But the good book tells us that the dead know nothing. They rest in the grave until the resurrection. And that we also know that the adversary has the ability to mimic these people and to masquerade and to fake this and to portray themselves as loved ones. They have this knowledge, they have this information, and they can deceive people. So be very careful. Do not mess around with this. Don't play with it whatsoever. It happens. I believe it's real. I've experienced it, but it's not ghosts and aliens like you think it is. It is from the adversary and his confederates. We have a super chat from Mr. Ryan Warren, and new member. Welcome, Ryan. Ryan says, I guess I'm part of the third group. I was cut off by half of my family for not going along with my aunt and uncle transitioning their 13-year-old daughter. You do good work. Keep telling the truth. Yeah, there you go. And you're not the only one suffering with that. That's one of those things. I can imagine that you had a lot of people in the family dealing with that sided with these parents and encouraged them, supported them. And even if they didn't, if they were just quiet and they just sat on, they were guilty of omission. By not actively pushing against this, they are to be considered in the second group, for sure. And you knew, and trust me, many of them knew that this was wrong as well, but they were unwilling to risk losing family, unwilling to stand up for what they knew to be right, weak, and cowards. We saw a lot of this with the vaccinations as well. This was a great divider. This was a great eye-opener for many of us that are in the third group as well. And that was a test. It was a test for you, and it was a test for the family members that did not protect this child. Yeah. It takes a lot of courage to do that, man. That's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Shout out to you, Ryan. Thank you for sharing that. That's tough. But again, it's quite clear. Any of you that are not willing to give up family members, then you're not worthy of the kingdom. Jesus tells us we need to count the cost before we decide to put on the armor of God. Do you know what's going to be expected of you? Do you know what you may have to sacrifice? Do you know you might have to live out of your car? You have to make these decisions. You have to understand this. You have to resolve to do it before you make the decision to do it. We have a super chat from Tyler Borgerding. Welcome. Shout out to you, Tyler. Tyler says, hey, Cody, just wanted to say thank you and the middlemen for starting the members group chat. A lot of great info has shared. Shout out to the Big Fizz. Yeah, and you can thank Overton and the middlemen for that. They have been putting that together. The last time I talked to Overton, this was almost a week ago, he said he had 3 groups that were getting together to meet. Now, we are building this plane as we're flying it. And this is Overton and his helpers are very instrumental in this, and we're starting to see what people want, and we're working towards building out a system to accommodate this. When we have a website, Lord willing, when we're going to be able to bring everything to one spot, and people have talked about Discord and different things, we're trying to figure out an option where we can share knowledge, where like-minded people are going to be able to come and have a place where you can bounce ideas off each other, learn from each other, have a place that you can talk with like-minded folk and such. And so he's been kind of putting this together, and it's kind of inventing itself as we go. We didn't realize there was going to be this much interest in it. And so this is kind of changing our course and what we're doing, and we're having these discussions now. So there's a lot of work that needs to go on behind the scenes, but there's a lot of good men that are putting a lot of effort into this and making this all happen. So I hate to be so nebulous about this. I wish I could tell you exactly what's going to happen and all that. I can't. We don't know yet. We're still building it, putting it together. So we're building the framework right now, but we're moving as fast as we can. So thank you for your support. It's all helping. We have a super chat from Chase Cormick, and new member. Welcome. Welcome, Chase. Chase writes, for electrician, is it better to go into apprenticeship for the journeyman, or is it fine to just work and learn skill goals of self-employment in the future? I think it's important to have, I don't necessarily like the gatekeeping that is involved with some of these trades. There's gatekeeping for electrician, but gatekeeping for plumbing, but I understand why. Because these particular trades it's really important that they're done correctly. If you don't wire your house correctly, your house will burn down. If you don't plumb your house properly, there can be health issues in your home. There can be plumbing that come loose and flood your whole house, and it could be a total loss. So these are important that they're done right. So there needs to be regulation and some standards for these particular trades. I definitely agree with that. Same with welding. You know, even if you're just talking about automotive, you know, my dad had a trailer hitch that he had welded up by a guy that, you know, wasn't certified in any ways or a journeyman, you know, was kind of a shade tree guy, and that thing broke. Well, you know, it turned out that it wasn't a problem and nobody got hurt, but what happens if, you know, a guy doesn't know what he's doing and he hangs a shingle and welds up something like that, a trailer breaks loose, careens across the road and kills a family because of shoddy work. You know, so there needs to be standards of things that have consequences like that, certainly. And that's the society that we live in. I think that you should get the certification. become a journeyman. I'm all about that. Plumbing and electrical, both of those are really good trades. Even HVAC. HVAC is good as well. But electrician would be my favorite. Go in, you're going to be doing the work anyway. You're going to have to make some sacrifices. You know, you're going to have 24 months. 24 months, you're going to be having to work and go to school part-time, but it's not that difficult. You know, probably one weekend, you know, one day during the weekend, couple of night classes at night. Guys do it all the time. You can do it. You have no excuse. You just need to decide to do it. Once you come out on the other side of it, you'll be properly trained, you'll be licensed, and you'll be in a position where you can pull your own permits, and you can just, it's going to be a lot easier for you. It's going to be easier for you to achieve. It's going to be easier for you to get permits, get work, have credibility, and you're going to have a lot more pride in your work, and it's just, and you're going to learn how to do it properly. So, yes, it's important to be well-rounded. By, you know, getting skills and stuff, but it's important to have focus. You can't just go do everything. Learn a little bit here, a little bit there. That will come with time. You'll be surprised how much you'll learn about construction just being an electrician. You're going to be in there, you're going to see the trades, how they work. You're going to see how a house is framed. You're going to be there even towards the end when you're doing trim, you're doing the finish on everything. You're going to see the finished carpet. You know, you're going to see the processes, and you learn from this. Even if you don't do it all the time, you're going to learn what you need to learn. You're going to be there through the whole progress, and you'll come in and remodel stuff like, you know. So it's, I would do that. I would certainly, would be no question, I would get the certification. I would become a journeyman. Residential would be the minimum. There are programs that you can get residential and commercial at the same time. You're just going to have to go twice as long, but that even gives you more option. But yeah, man, if you're coming out of school, that would be a good thing. Even if you want to go to college, man, I couldn't encourage you enough. 18 is pretty young. You may think you know everything, but you really don't. You could use some time out in the workforce. You're going to be working with other men. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to grow up a lot. And you're going to appreciate college a lot more. Journeyman certificate. You'll be able to make a bunch of money. You'll probably still be able to live at home, so you won't have all those expenses. You'll be able to stack cash. You could go into college with $100 grand in your bank if you were smart about it. And then you'll be a lot more mature. You'll be more of a man. Instead of a child going to school, you're going to be a man. 2 years working in the trades will make you a man, and you'll look at college very differently. And you may decide you don't want to do it. But you can make that decision. There's nothing wrong with that at all. That would be a very smart thing to do, in my opinion. We have a new member, Mr. Jay Spray. Shout out to you, Jay. Thank you. Thank you. We have a new member, Kent Martin, as well, and a super chat. Thank you, Kent. Kent writes, East Coast man here. Do you have issues burning softwood with soot, etc.? Over here, a yearly cleaning works fine. Yeah, you can. You can. Now, this Doug fir here. Let me grab a piece. This is the tree of my people. Douglas fir is the perfect all-around wood, best that there is. Makes the best lumber in the world. That's undisputed. Doug fir, why it's so good. Doug fir is not a hardwood. It's not as soft as pine. So, you know, it's kind of in the middle a little bit. But what's so brilliant about Doug fir is that it makes a good firewood, and it makes the best structural wood. People say, well, why not oak? Is not oak tougher and stronger than Doug fir? Yeah, it is, yeah. But oak is so heavy and so dense that if you're doing, let's say you're going to be doing timber framing, right? And you're going to have a long beam or timber. It's going to be going a header or something across the garage, and it needs to be 30, 40 feet long. The oak will start to fail under its own weight. It's just so heavy that it starts to lose its ability to be strong structurally. With the Doug fir, because of its long grainy composition, there's long lines, almost like rebar running through it, and it's lightweight, it's the perfect combination that you can have big spans, and it's not super heavy, and strong, so it carries its own weight. So it's the perfect building material. Also, Doug fir, old growth Doug fir, not the small or second growth stuff, makes beautiful fence posts. You know, only second to Western red cedar in its ability to not to rot with direct ground contact. There's old growth Doug fir posts that have been in the ground 50 years, and some of them are still solid. So it does a lot of things. As far as firewood, That's what I burn. It makes very good firewood. It doesn't burn too fast, doesn't burn too slow. It's going to burn faster, and it does not put the BTUs out that oak, cherry, hickory, some of these hardwoods do. But it will heat fine. And we don't have those woods here in any number. So this is what we have in abundance. So this is what we burn. With that being said, the downside to this is that it has a lot of resin in it. Sap, pitch, whatever you want to call it. And if you burn it, if it's not cured, if it's wet, what happens if you are burning Doug fir and you see a lot of smoke coming out of your chimney, like white smoke, that's uncombusted fuel, essentially. And what happens in the firebox, if this has too much moisture content in it, let's say it's like 28, 30% moisture content in it, and you throw this in the fire, well, a lot of it, the energy that the fire is using, that the fire is a rapid oxidation that produces light and heat. This oxidation process, a lot of it is dedicated to dealing with that water in the fuel, dealing with that water, evaporating that water to steam so that the fire's not put out, and it produces a whole lot less heat. Well, when that happens, all of that uncombusted material, because it doesn't get up to temperature properly, goes up the chimney and it starts to adhere. As it hits the chimney, it starts to cool. And as it cools, it sticks to the side, and it turns into what we call here creosote, which is a black tar-like substance that builds up and builds up and builds up. And then you have a huge problem. And that's what we see with a lot of trailers and a lot of Philistines who don't properly cure their wood and burn wet wood because they don't plan ahead of time. They get this massive buildup of creosote, and then in about the middle of the night sometime, this will ignite, and it's highly flammable, and will turn your chimney into a jet engine. It is terrifying if you've ever experienced it. It will be a massive flame. It could be 20-foot flame shooting out of the top of your chimney while this is just burning. Basically, you just turned it into a rocket mass heater, and it's burning hot. And if you haven't built your chimney to code, and it's an old house, the chimney will heat up, and then it heats the surrounding framing material and the walls, and then those ignite, and then it burns your house down. It happened to us multiple times every winter out here, people burning Douglas fir that was not properly cured. Do you know how to stop a chimney fire? Simple. If it ever happens to you, a chimney fire like that, if that starts, go get pillowcases, a blanket, something, cotton sheets, towels, whatever you can get, and soak those babies in the sink immediately. Run over and soak them in the sink, completely wet. Get a 5-gallon bucket full of water, dunk them, whatever. Get that firebox opened and throw that wet mass into the firebox. And stand back. Open it and throw it in there and get away from it, because the steam will roll out and the steam will burn you. But that will produce so much steam, it will make a giant steam cloud that will go up. There's so much water in there that it will put that fire out, that chimney fire out. That's the way to do it. I've seen guys climbing up on top of them, trying to put a cap on stuff, putting their life at risk. It's terrible. It's a very scary thing to deal with. Where the solution, what we used to do with it as a fire department, we had a couple of just big burlap bags, and we just run in there with a bucket of water or use the sink, dunk those things in there, throw them in the firebox, problem solved. So the solution is, if your wood is cured, you get it down into below 20% in the teens or so, burn it dry, where it's combusting completely, like you see here. There's no smoke coming outside. It's completely clear. That you don't get that near as much. You're always going to get a little bit of buildup, but you're not going to get that real combustible creosote, that tar, like you would burning the wet wood. So yes, we have to get up there with a chimney every other year or so and clean it out, just like you guys do. But it's usually just ash, unless you're not burning your wood properly. Speaking of which, let's throw a couple pieces in here. It's like our fire is getting low. But if you could only have one type of wood for everything, Douglas fir, that's your huckleberry right there. I don't know that I would ever buy a stove that didn't have a side loader again either, to be honest with you, as much as I like the stove. Yeah, that's a good question, though. Thank you, Kent. Appreciate that. Shout out to the East Coast and their hardwood. Wouldn't say we're envious, but I wouldn't say we're not either. We have a super chat from Sam Rackham. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for your generosity. Sam says, Cody, thank you for waking me the F up. Boy, you and me both, brother. You and me both. We're in this ship together, I'll tell you. The elites have designed this world for us to fail. It's time we all realize this. I love you, brother. Yeah. But one of the saddest things amongst the preparedness-minded community is those who are not people of the book, that don't know the outcome and don't realize that we're not battling this by ourselves, that we have our Heavenly Father knows what we have need of before we ask and will compensate for our weaknesses. That's what makes it bearable, and that's what gives us the blessed assurance. Is there any better way to put it than the blessed assurance? It's an old term, but what that means to me, the blessed assurance is the assurance that God is in charge, is ultimately in charge of everything, and that these presidents and crooked senators and crooked cops and such, as much as we despise them, maybe even say hate them, ultimately is part of God's plan, and that we have to remember that, as difficult as that may be. And this is necessary. It's necessary, just like what Sam said. Thank you for waking me up. It was necessary. Those evils, Sam, are what were necessary to wake both of us up. We were too comfortable. We realized that things were not great. Realized that we had to work too hard, and this was not, things were not fair, and it was hard for the common man to pull himself up and get going. But it wasn't so bad that we were willing to do something about it, right? You get in that state of complacency. That's why these things are necessary. Do you think God wants the world to turn into this sewer that it has? No, he doesn't. But he's willing to let us be pinched and pressed out of our comfort zone, because he knows that without that, we won't wake up. We won't react. We'll just stay under the ether, and we'll just march into our grave in a lost condition. It is this injustice that speaks to the heart of the repentant man. We just can't stand it. We see how cruel, we see how wrong everything is, and we can only be pushed so far. And God knows this, so he allows the adversary to do this. He allows us to be pushed out of our comfort zone, because without that we won't react, we won't respond. That's what it took for me to do it. That's what it's taking for you to do it as well. So that's a reminder to me as well. I'm not preaching to anyone here. I'm having conversations with myself. I'm in the same boat as you guys are. But yeah, that's true. And that's the theory behind the cold shower. That's why it works so well. It's the exact same thing we're talking about. The bed is warm. The sheets are warm. The coffee is good. Turn the furnace up. Sit there, become comfortable, take your ease, right? Are you going to accomplish anything? Are you going to get out there and fight and build businesses and provide for your family and experience things? No, you're not. It's that it forces us. That cold shower, first thing in the morning, wakes us up out of our slumber to kickstart us for the day, to get us going. It's an allegory. It's a perfect analogy for the big picture, for sure. We have a super chat from Mr. Mason. Welcome, Mr. Mason. Mr. Mason says, can I consider myself a pro-ho if I rent? Yes, a pro-ho. Yes, I think you can. And we'll call you an apprentice pro-ho, but a pro-ho nonetheless, right? Like an electrician is an electrician apprentice. Yeah, I think so. There are certain things that you cannot relate to until you have the burden of owning your own home to truly be sympathetic with our cause. But you can certainly be an apprentice pro-ho, for sure, yes. Thank you for being here. Good question. I haven't received that question before. We have a member message from Mr. Cole Hunter. Cole Hunter's been with us for 1 month. Shout out to you, Cole. And Cole says, of course the light bringer would sway masses to follow him as king. It's just a shame a majority we know will fall for his lies. Yeah, it is. Narrow be the way and few be that find it. You know, our Lord gave us the example. He said, I am the good shepherd. Now, what does that mean? I'm the good shepherd. Well, I'm the good shepherd, and my sheep know my voice, and they respond to me. If another calls to them, they will not respond to me. Now, I don't know much about shepherding or sheep or animal husbandry for that fact, but what little I've learned about this is that a sheep shepherd becomes very intimate with his sheep. They come to trust him and to know him. They learn his voice. And if someone were to try to coax them away, another shepherd that they didn't recognize, they wouldn't respond to him. They don't know him. And Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, and my sheep know my name. Jesus is speaking right now. He's speaking to us, and there are people that are responding, and there are people that are not responding. And if you hear the call, then you are of his flock, and he's your shepherd. And yeah, it is going to be very sad. It's going to be very sad how many people are lost. Narrow be the way, and few be that find it. It's yeah, you know, it's one thing that's really difficult for me to get my head around. You know, the good book tells us that when at the second coming, that the dead in Christ shall be raised from the dead. The sea will give up its dead. Those who died safe in Christ will be resurrected from the graves, and they will meet him in the air. And those of us that will remain will follow. We'll all meet him in the air. And I will go with him to a place he's prepared and be with him for 1,000 years, while the wicked the world lays desolate and destroyed, with the bodies of the wicked strewn about, you know, over the entire plain. We're there with him for 1,000 years. You know, he says he's going to wipe away every tear. There will be any more sickness or sorrow or pain. Now, what is more painful than losing a child, or a child that's rebelled and turned from you and no longer speaks to you? You know, that's really a tough thing. How much more difficult would it be? How could you enjoy your time in the kingdom knowing that there were so many lost? Maybe maybe your brother or sister, maybe your parents, maybe your children that didn't make it for whatever reason. How could you possibly ever be joyful to be in the situation? How could you ever forget that? Would there not always be regret? How can he wipe away every tear? Some people say, well, he's just going to clear the hard drive. He's just going to take away all memory of everything that happened. No, that's not true. We know that we'll see our Messiah will see the nail prints in his hands. He's in his resurrected state. There's a first fly of the spring. After he was 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb and was resurrected, he showed himself to a great many people, including the disciples. And we have the story of Thomas. You know, Thomas, doubting Thomas. We've heard that term before. When Thomas was told that the Messiah had returned, he said, no, he didn't. I won't believe it. I won't believe it until I put my finger in the nail holes in his hands and my hand in the wound in his side. That's where the word doubting Thomas came from. And when he walked in the door and saw the Messiah resurrected for the first time, Jesus invited him over to do that very thing. So there he was in his resurrected state. That's the way he will spend eternity, with those wounds still showing on his physical body, which is a very interesting study on its own, right? So if he's to wipe the hard drive, are we supposed to look at those and say, Lord, why do you have wounds on your hands and feet? And is he supposed to say, I have no idea? You know, that doesn't make any sense, right? So we'll know, we'll have those memories. And it will be important to have those memories so that this rebellion against God will never happen again, that he can simply point to it. We're also told, I'm going to go off the reservation here. I don't necessarily have a scripture for it, but this is just my understanding, so take it for what it's worth. It's not worth very much. We also know that there is the book of life that God keeps. And in the book of life are the deeds of all of God's children, whether they be for good or they be for bad. Everything is being recorded. Everything that we say, everything that we do in the dark, behind closed doors, all these things are all recorded. I wonder, and I'll just speculate here, I wonder if that 1,000 years is not spent reviewing the records. Let's say you had a friend that you worked with, that you thought, or went to church with, that you thought to be just an upstanding and perfectly good Christian. That everything at face value, everything on the outside looked like he was righteous and a friend of God. But he's not with you, and you have questions, right? And then you see and you look at someone else that you see in the kingdom that you thought to be a despicable person, that you maybe even hated or was an enemy of you. And there he is. Well, why is he here? Why is he here and my beloved friend or church member is not? Well, I like to think that the book of life will be there to access. Maybe there'll be a museum. Maybe that 1,000 years is for a time for you to see that if you come to God and you say, God, why are my children not here? Why is my spouse not here? It's not fair, why me and no one else? I'd like to think maybe he gently leads you to the book of life, and you get to see the record of a man, of a woman's life and all of their deeds, and all of the times that they rejected the urging of the Holy Spirit and what they did in secret that you didn't know about. Maybe that's how long it takes for you to come to the realization that when you see the books opened and you see how God strove and worked to save all these individuals, time after time, year after year after year, that you'll be able to understand yourself that God is not to be held responsible for the lost condition of these people, that God moved heaven and earth to try to save them, but respected their will, the will to choose, and that maybe it takes 1,000 years for you to come into alignment, into agreement with him, that his decision was just and it couldn't be any other way. And that's how you go on and go through life. I don't know. I don't know. But that's kind of the way that I kind of think about that could be a possibility. We have a super chat from Colonel Lee and new member. Welcome. Welcome. Shout out to you. I'm glad to have the Colonel here. You're our first Colonel that I know of. Thank you for that generous super chat. The Colonel says, I am not of the same faith as you, but I appreciate how you explain all of these things. You speak eloquently, clearly, and confidently. Your streams have been great. Thank you for all of the content. Well, that's a very kind thing for you to say, Colonel. Eloquent and intelligent would not be the way I would describe these live streams. Stammering, poor takes, too much passion. But I appreciate that. It must look very different on your end than it does from behind my eyes. I appreciate that, Colonel. That means a lot to me. That means a great deal to me. Thank you very much. That's one of the nicest things I've heard in some time. We have a new member, SC. Welcome. Welcome, SC. Welcome. All American Maker left us a super chat, and he says, thank you. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. Just purchased water storage. We'll soon be learning to weld soon. I make a lot, but always want to learn more. Yeah, welding is a good trade. That'd be a good trade. A guy, if you had a little MIG welder and some basic understanding, in difficult times, and even in times now and in the near 5 or 6 years, it's going to be outside the ability for people to take their equipment to traditional shops. Minimum wage is $15 an hour, I think, in the state now. Most employers are not going to be able to afford this. The ones that can are going to have to pass these high prices on to the people that want to come in and have welding and different things done. And it's either going to be, well, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. And if you don't have a welder yourself, you can't do it. So the need to be repairing things that we've thrown out in the past is going to be changing radically. So you've got a garage and you've got a grinder and a welder and some basic skills, and it doesn't take very much to separate you from the masses anymore. You're going to have people coming to you, and that could be, if we go into more of a barter system in the future, that could be a very good feather in your cap to have that skill, that ability, fixing a lawnmower, fixing a broken axle, repairing different things. Those things are going to be valuable. Those of you that have those skills, and I hear it all the time and see it in the comments, and oftentimes comments are kind of snide, when I'll share something that should be obvious, should be like basic skills. And people will always comment like, oh yeah, tell me what I don't know. I mean, good grief, are you serious? Are you actually talking about this? Well, you know, you can get into that. When you read that over and over again, it's like, oh yeah, maybe I'm wasting people's time. Overton brought it to me just the other day, you know, when we were having this conversation, that he's like, you know, don't be afraid. He advised me, don't be afraid to go back and share those basic things. Those are not just commonly understood by everyone. You kind of live in a bubble. You think because you grew up this way and the men that you worked around, your dad knew how to do this. This is not the case for many people. Most young people are seeing this for the very first time. So don't shy away from showing something as simple of how to rotate your tires on your truck or how to get a tough lug nut unstuck. You know, those type of things. And I've been thinking about that a lot. You know, I think that's a valid point. But that just goes to prove if you have some abilities, some skills that you can fix and repair things, that's going to be an important skill in the future. A classic story of that is there's a great recording. It was an interview done of a man that lived a year during the Bosnian conflict, where he lived inside of a city that was completely surrounded and cut off from all supplies for 1 year. And he tells a very interesting story of what took place in the city and what happened to families in there and how they survived, what was important and what was not important. And the one thing that made a difference for him, and he really attributed to his ability to survive the whole thing, was that he developed a special skill. As simple as it may sound, he figured out a way. He had a couple propane tanks, I think, from a gas grill. And he figured out a way to adapt those propane tanks to refill lighters. Lighters. The power was out. There was no power water in that city for a year. The only way people had to heat and to keep warm and to cook was with fire. How do you make fire? Can you rub two sticks together and start a fire? Because I assure you, just because you've watched a couple bushcraft videos on YouTube, that doesn't mean that you can do it. I assure you. If you haven't tried it, go try it. Go try it in the best of conditions, when it's single-digit humidity in August. And then go try the same thing in February when there's 90% humidity, and tell me how successful you are of starting a fire by rubbing two sticks together without previously practicing, because it's exceedingly difficult. Exceedingly difficult. So having this is important, that these don't last forever. Well, he was able to figure out how to fill those lighters. And people came to him with their lighters, and he'd filled them, and they would exchange ammunition, exchange lighter filling for a can of food, etc., etc. That one special skill that he had and no one else had was exceedingly valuable in that struggle. We have a brand new member, All-American Maker. Welcome. Welcome. Shout out to you. Shout out to you. We have also a super chat from Ryan Barnes, and new member. Welcome, Ryan. Glad to have you here. Thank you for becoming a member. He says, I would love to see you on Timcast. I'm going to super chat him on your behalf. Perhaps the middleman can email him as well. Yeah, I would go on Timcast. I watch his stuff. Yeah, if you can put that together, I'm open to those things. I'm even open to travel a little bit. That would be, it would give us a lot of exposure. We get our message out to a lot of people. I don't know what we talk about, but seems I don't have any problem talking. The gift of gab, as Mrs. W tells me. Yeah, if you guys can put that together, go spam Tim, and it might be a good idea to come up with a topic, a particular thing, something that's relevant to today to entice him or to give him some incentive. Yeah, I'd do that. We have a super chat from Liam Dilks. Welcome, Liam. Shout out to you. Thank you very much. And new member, Travis. Welcome, Travis. No, Travis has been with us a year. Liam and Travis. Liam Dykes. Oh, Liam also writes with a super chat, how will you gain true peace? How will we gain true peace worldwide? We won't. We won't. Christ tells us, I didn't come to bring peace, but a sword. And that says it all. That's from the mouth of God right there. There will never be peace. There are too many people that will not accept the truth, and they'll go to their grave defending their position, even though it may be wrong. So this idea of world peace is a fallacy. You know, that's one of the end time prophecies that we know. You know, no man knows the time or the hour when Christ will return. But we do know the sign of the times. And right before he comes, he'll tell us that there'll come a point, and it could be through the Antichrist or what have you, that something happens on earth that brings all of humanity together in common accord, where everyone is saying peace and safety, and then right after that, sudden destruction comes upon you. So there'll be some sort of something that brings the whole world together, a pseudo-belief, a pseudo-reason for peace. What could bring the Christians and the Muslims and the Jews, what could bring everyone together? What could bring the Russians and the Americans, the South Koreans and the North Koreans, East Coast man and West Coast man? What could bring us together where we would put away all of our petty differences and fight together for a common goal? Well, it's simple. A common threat. A common threat that threatened the Chinese, the Koreans, the Japanese, the Americans, the British, the French, everyone, that threatened everyone equally. And that if we did not pull together as a cohesive unit, we were all going to perish. That's the only thing that would, a serious crisis that would bring us all together. Just like that's what oftentimes brings a family member that's been, a family together that's been separated or been estranged from petty differences or hurt feelings. A member in the family can get sick, and the children will all come back, and the family will be reunited, and all of those hurts and those common things are all washed away. They don't seem that important anymore when faced with the death of a father or a mother or a loved one. All of that can be put away. That's the only thing that will get us together. So prophecy tells that right before the end, that this will be something that happens. Well, what's in the news these days? Is it aliens? Aliens. The aliens are flying around now. All of a sudden, they're everywhere. Could an alien attack or a pseudo-alien attack, could that bring the nations together for a common goal? Do not be deceived. Do not be deceived. Believe nothing of what you hear and half of what you see. We have a super chat from Jeremy Billow, and new member. Welcome, welcome. Jeremy says, thank you for the stove and especially the chimney fire advice. Yes, yeah, don't be afraid of it, just be prepared. It's always a good idea, if you have a wood stove, to have a metal bucket, a pail. All Proho should have a metal fire pail near your wood stove or fireplace. There's lots of different reasons. Many a house has been burned down by people that have cleaned out their firebox unknowing that it still had hot coals in it. And where do they put it in? They put it in a plastic bucket. Here's what they do. They scoop it out with a shovel. It's still got heat in it. They don't realize it. They put it in the plastic 5-gallon bucket. They go outside with the intention of, oh, I'll pour that out around the apple trees. I'll pour that out, the wood ashes, into the garden because those things are good for our garden, right? But they get distracted and so, well, I'll just sit it here on the porch and I'll get, when I put my shoes on, then I'll pour that out in the garden. Well, they go to bed and that heats up and it catches the bucket on fire, then it catches the deck on fire, then it burns their house down. It happens all too often. Or, let's say a candle gets knocked over in the house and all of a sudden the curtains are on fire. And the way material is made in modern curtains and couches and carpets, there's so much petroleum and chemicals and oil in it, you'll have an entire room engulfed in seconds before you can even get outside and even think about where's the hose that you put away for the winter time or that you didn't put away and now it's frozen. And how are you going to get water to that fire? Having a metal bucket, there's many reasons. The metal bucket is important because if you were, look at the way the bottom is. See, false bottom, airspace, so it won't transfer heat. Metal bucket is important for your hot ashes because if you did sit this on your porch, it's unlikely it's going to catch on fire. It'll just eventually put itself out. Or you need to get water on a couch on fire because someone knocked a candle over or your carpet's burning. And don't say it won't happen. It happened to me. Happened to me with a grease fire. Had some hot oil in a pan, was moving it over to take it outside to dump it out. A little bit popped out of my hand, burnt my hand a little bit. I jarred it, poured it out on the carpet, immediately fully engulfed carpet fire in the middle of the house. It was an apartment I was renting. So having a metal bucket, you'll be able to put out, you've heard of a bucket brigade, right? That's how they used to put fires out. This is a good thing to have. This is a real important safety issue to have in your house if you have a fireplace or wood stove. Good question, or good comment though. Good. We have a super chat from Dr. Pepper. Mr. Dr. Pepper, shout out to you. Dr. Pepper says, thank you, much to pray on during my fast. Yes, much to pray on. So we talked about, I didn't get back with the middleman. We've been so much going on trying to get prepared for Jack's debate and such and everything ready and get on the road. And what I was going to propose to do to the middleman today is we talked about doing, those of you who would like to participate with me, to do a fast 1 day a week for a month. So that would be 4 days of fasting for a 24-hour fast. And the middleman brought up, last time I checked, Wednesday. I was not going to start today. I'm on the road. I've got too many things going on, and I've already had my breakfast. So I will be starting, unless I hear from the middleman, we'll be starting the fast next Wednesday. So I say we start from, if you want to start preparing yourself for that. And I think what we should ask for, fasting is a time to focus your intentions, focus your prayer on something that's really important to you. Because the fasting, the hunger, the constant hunger, the hunger pains remind you of what you're doing, and they make you very deliberate about your focus and asking God what you want. I think we should ask for a supernatural understanding of Scripture and what God is doing. Orders from the Father as to what we should be doing and how we should be preparing for this difficult time that's coming, and for courage. That's what I'm going to be working towards. So next Wednesday morning, from the time I wake up, we'll be doing drink water. I don't know that it's a good idea not to drink water. Drink all the water you want, but we'll abstain for food for 24 hours. For that reason, we'll do that for a month, and that we'll start that next Wednesday. So let me know. 7's in the chat if you'd like to participate with that. I will be doing it. And several of the middlemen will be doing that, those who can. We have a super chat from Chris Hall, and new member. Welcome, Mr. Hall. He says, how do you select your war band? What region of this country has the right people to band together with when things get really bad, pro-ho thoughts? You can do that. You can do it anywhere. We had this discussion last week. I got a sliver here. That Doug fir does give you bad slivers. War band, got it. War band members, you're going to find them everywhere. You just have to find like-minded people. I hate to go over this again. We went over this in detail on kind of how to go about that. I don't even remember. Look at all the 7s. That's very encouraging. I got to stop and see this here. Goodness, look at all that. Yes, excellent. Robert, Frederick, Chris, Dr. Pepper, Gagaski, Ryan, Jeremy, Cole, BH, Skylar, John, Jack, Josh. Man, that's encouraging. We're going to do it. I encourage you to do it. Take those cold showers, beloved. 3 minutes. 3 minutes every morning. Follow the Wim Hof breathing method. It's changing lives. We need to prepare ourselves for the coming battle. This is a spiritual battle. We don't advocate violence here. That's not for us to do. How did I select my war band? It's got to be, they got to be close by. Then they're no value. That's where you have to start. So, as I said last week, the difference between West Coast and East Coast man is West Coast man is going to be much more open and inviting. You can make friends usually relatively quickly. It's not unusual to strike up a conversation and start building a friendship. East Coast man, it's a little bit harder to break into. He's going to be more reserved. He's going to want to know you and a little bit more about you, and you're going to have to prove yourself, and it might even take a year or so. But once East Coast man lets you in, you have a friend indeed, because there's nothing more loyal than East Coast man. He's stubborn, but that also contributes to his loyalty. Hard-headed East Coast man makes a good friend, but it just takes a while to break into that. So understand that, depending where you're at. If you're going to make a decision and you need to get something put together quick, at West Coast, people are going to be more outgoing, more open to be out doing stuff, inviting you into groups, where East Coast man's going to make it a little bit more difficult. So that, just in a nutshell, that's kind of what you're looking at. So act accordingly as to where you want to live. Jamie, good to see you, Jamie, and new member. Jamie says, I work as a software developer, but I'm trying to get more Proho skills. I'm a bit embarrassed, but I've never even changed the oil in my car. Advice. Jamie, excuse me. Did I bring my water? Where's my jug? I don't think I got here with my jug. Let me check. My granddad always said, where's my jug? Oh man, I didn't get here with my jug. I'm gonna have to go with a zesty drink. Keep my gaming fridge. I used to go through these carbonated drinks out here in the shop like crazy. I put a little cooler out there. My manservant Jariah was constantly restocking. That has sat in there ever since I've been doing cold showers. That has sat in there untouched, unstocked. This is the first thing I pulled out of there in weeks. I just don't drink these sugary, this is sugar-free here, San Pellegrino, but I just don't drink these carbonated sugary drinks anymore. But goodness, sometimes you need a zesty drink. I certainly need one. Don't feel bad about that, about not knowing how to change the oil on your car, Jamie. It's not your fault. You were never told. It's arrogant, some of these guys. Especially guys who were raised with guns, they come out of the womb thinking that they know everything about how to shoot, how to reload, how to use a holster, when they don't know nothing. I thought the same way. I grew up hunting and around guns, but it was just, you kind of learn by osmosis. There wasn't any training or anything. It wasn't until I got older and got into training to realize how ignorant I was and how many mistakes I was making. So don't worry about that. It's not your fault. You haven't been taught. You can learn. I'll tell you what I'll do for you, Jamie. The next oil change, usually Jariah has been changing the oil on my truck, but the next oil change, I will do it myself, and I'll show you the tips and tricks I learned from my granddad. There's little tips on things, I can show you, like how to capture the nut, the drain plug on the oil pan without dropping it in the oil and having to fish around for it. How to be careful so that you never double stack the gaskets like many new time oil changers do, because when they pull the old filter off, the old gasket sticks on there and they put a double gasket on there and it comes loose. How to get free, how to properly set up jack stands and where to jack from. This is important. How to jack up your car if your jack isn't heavy, isn't strong enough to jack up everything at one time. Little tricks like that. Things my granddad taught me is take on the engine compartment. Once you do the oil change, take a Sharpie right there on the core support, right on there. How many quarts? What filter wrench you needed? What was how many millimeter socket for the drain plug? So that when you go to do it the second time, you don't crawl underneath the infernal thing and not have the tools you need. That sort of thing. So it sounds simple, and it is simple. It's nothing you can't do. And some people that always do it or have always done it are laughing at me right now. But these things, they don't come automatic. These were taught to me by men that learn from experience. So we'll talk about oils, AMS oil, additives. We could talk about all those things, how to do it properly. You put $70,000, $80,000 into a brand new pickup. With the state of the labor force these days, I would not sleep well at night going through some of these Jiffy Lubes or these fast discount oil changing places. Not to mention they use inferior products and filters and such many times. We'll do that, Jamie. When we can talk about tools and stuff. I think that's a good point. I've been considering that when Overton brought it up to my attention, that don't be afraid to do those basic things. Those are not just automatically understood. And don't feel embarrassed about that, goodness. There's no reason to be feel embarrassed about being ignorant. Ignorant has a negative connotation that it doesn't deserve. Ignorant just means I just don't know. That's all. I'm ignorant. I'm ignorant when it comes to brain surgery. I'm ignorant when it comes to writing code. I'm ignorant to what makes a computer do what it does, That doesn't mean I'm stupid. We have a super chat or a member message from Kyle B. and 14-month member. Welcome. He says, Cody, thank you for passing the cup. I think you would be shocked how many there are around the well. Yeah, I would be shocked, Kyle. We're coming up on, if we haven't surpassed it already, Mrs. W. pointed this out to me the other day, 1 billion video views on this YouTube channel. How do you put that into perspective? How do you put 1 million in perspective, but 1 billion video views? And I'll tell you my perspective. I sit behind this camera, and I spend, maybe a half hour or so a day in the chat. And I don't see the depth of the chat. I never get to the bottom of it, or the comments, or personal or emails. I just try to answer a few or comment on a few at the top, but it just scratches the surface. I don't really know what's going on. And you see the names and you see the numbers and the graphs and all that, but it doesn't really sink in. She told me, I always tell her, like, we're about to come up on this, or we had so many views. I mean, we have days where we get over 2 million views on the channel. And that's just on YouTube. That's not including TikTok, which is taken off now. I think I have almost 300,000 followers on TikTok right now. So these numbers are crazy, And when we were talking about them, that were coming up on 1 billion video views, she said, "I don't think I want to know about this, because if I think about it, it actually scares me." And then I think about the obligation that will come with. It's one thing to be showing someone how to sharpen an axe in front of an audience like that. It's an entirely different thing to be professing to be teaching the gospel, because we know that what's going to be, what the consequences are if you lead people astray on that. That's not lost on me at all. And the other thing, so it just doesn't dawn on me. I mean, I see the numbers, but it's impossible to quantify that. I guess it really started to dawn on me of late. Is I can't go outside. I can't go into town without running into multiple people that are subscribers. It used to be maybe once a week, or every time I go to Home Depot. I can never go to Home Depot without running into multiple. That's where Proho shops, I'm convinced. Proho's always there. I've even gotten to the point with Home Depot, if I'm in a rush, that I put my hoodie on and my sunglasses, because I don't have time to stop and visit with anyone, so I go incognito. But it's at this point now that it's a very weird situation to go out and to have so many people looking at you, or always have people looking at you, and sometimes they are and sometimes they're not, but you don't really know. But so you're always wondering, are they looking at me, and am I safe? But it's rare. It's hardly ever I go out now that I don't run into someone that comes up and says hi. And I've always had good experiences and such, but it's a difficult situation, because some of these folks have been watching for a long time, and I've been an open book and shared my life as it's unfolded, and you can get to know a person pretty well on this format, especially when they've been on here for over a decade. So they have a very intimate knowledge of me and my family, and they know how many kids I have and what I drive and all these sorts of things. And you can have people waiting for your truck. You park your truck and they recognize it and they'll wait for you to come out. But I don't know who they are, and I know nothing about it. And they have a familiarity with me, but I don't know them at all. So it's a little bit awkward. That's just the way that it is. I don't know. I never expected this. I started doing videos because I enjoyed doing gear reviews and sharing stuff, and this is where we're at. But thank you, Kyle. Yeah, I know. I just don't, I want it clearly understood that I don't want to be up here preaching to you. I never thought that the idea of standing up on a pulpit, a raised platform, and preaching down to people like the churches do, as some position of authority or some person, elevated above everyone else. I've never liked that, and I wouldn't want. We're in this together, beloved. These things that we're sharing, I suffer from them as well. I'm preaching to myself here. I'm thinking. I don't pre-think anything. What comes off my head when I answer these questions or we get into these discussions is just what I think. I don't have any agenda. I don't know what we're going to talk about when we come here. We just let God lead and we just go where we go. I don't have the time nor the desire to premeditate or come up with topics or different things. It's just the way that it is. And the reason why we're here and the reason why we like this type of content is because it's genuine. And there's so few things that are genuine in this world. Everything is so much BS that the heart longs for something that's real and authentic. And this is as real and as authentic as it gets. That's why it's good. Shout out to Mr. Jason Barr, member for 2 years. Welcome, Jason. It was very generous of you. Jason gives us a scripture, John 16:33. These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. There you have it right there. There you go. There you have it. And that's always the litmus test. If you find yourself being in frustration, aggravation, losing your peace, especially having fear and anxiety, that is a red flag. That should be a red flag right in front of your face, warning you that you have separated yourself from the peace of God, that you need to stop what you're doing, get your mind straight, and that might just be going into your car, closing the door, bowing your head, reconnecting with God. Go through the Wim Hof breathing method, breathe a little bit, focus, recite the promises of God, and then reset, and then get back out. I've done that. I get into a passion on these live streams, and afterwards, I sit here. It takes me a half hour or so just to come down from the exhilaration that comes from it. And that's my time, to reassess, why did I lose my temper, why am I responding in this particular way, etc. That's a good reminder. That's a good scripture to remember right there. John 16:33. That should be in the top 10. We have super chat from Mr. George Lopez and new member. Welcome. Shout out to you. George writes, how did you find Proho community to move to? God called me to central Montana and I was expecting to find community, but I'm waiting to see where it is. Well, you can't wait to see where it is. You have to put yourself out there. It's not gonna come to you. Not likely. The example. I bought a snow bike a couple years ago. Didn't know anyone who snow biked. Didn't know how to snow bike. Was afraid to go by myself. I needed community. I needed someone to go with, right? Where do you find that? How do you find that? How long would it have been if I sat here at the house and waited for someone to stop by my house and say, hey, Cody, you want to go snow biking? How long would I have been waiting? Long time, right? So what did I do? I placed an ad in Facebook. I think it was Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. I don't remember, one or the other. Laid it out. I live in this area. This is a popular snow biking area. I just got a snow bike, looking for people to connect with, looking for people to snow bike with. Guy responded, happened to be the guy that ran a club that organized rides every 2 weeks or every month or so, and I got plugged in with these guys, started going with them, put myself out there, made friendships, and now I have this really great group. Now, would this have happened had I not made the effort and stepped out? You've got to make the effort. You have to go against your comfort zone and make the effort. How did we find our geographical location? That was God. We wrote about this in our book. God put it upon our heart that we didn't want to raise our kids in the city. And then we came in contact with the family, the Hohenberger family, that were living up in rural northern Montana. And we didn't wait for them to come to us. We sought them out. We got their book, we read their book, looked into them a little bit, realized that they were speaking, drove to where they were speaking, introduced ourselves, got invited up to their place, learned about this country lifestyle, made the plan to do it, and did it. You know, this was all proactive. God will put the idea upon your heart. He put the idea upon our heart, but we have to contribute. You can't sit around waiting for someone to fall into your lap. You know, Noah had to build the ark, right? Could God have saved his family through the flood? Of course he could have. But Noah and his sons contributed with God to do the work. He put the idea out there. He gave them the instructions, the plan. He gave you the plan. Get your family out of the city, get into the country. You have to get out of your shell. And that's a difficult thing for rugged individualists like American men are. We want to be islands. We want to do it on our own. We want to be our own man and not show vulnerabilities. And you know, you're gonna have to put that away. I had to put it away. You have to open yourself up, make yourself vulnerable. You have to take risks, maybe even risks of being rejected, but you have to do it. Start with organizations that do things that you like. Do you like to shoot? Is there a rifle club around? Are there guys that go to the gun store? Hey, do you know anyone that's got a range? Do you know anyone that's doing some lessons? You've got to put yourself out there in those environments where you're most likely going to find fellow travelers, you know, like-minded men. So whatever that may be. The church, unfortunately, is not necessarily a good resource. There's nothing there but a bunch of old women and emasculated men for the most part. Not all. Most thing you run into those guys, they're going to, oh, turn the other cheek, brother, which shows their ignorance of Scripture. We have a super chat from Jake White. Shout out to you, Jake. Jake says, I'm a surveyor, engineer, and carpenter. 3 good trades. My 3 sons will never beg for bread. Thank the Father. Bless you, Cody. Yeah. Surveyor, engineer, and carpenter. Yeah, I'm the same way. I am a ditch digger, a truck driver, a roofer, a framer, a house painter, concrete guy, landscaper, waiter. I could go back to my previous job of greeter at Abercrombie and Fitch. I'd have to hit the gym a little bit, but that's always an option. Do they let old men stand there and greet anymore with their shirt off? Probably not. I've always got interpretive dance, you know, but the arts always suffer under a hard economy. We have a super chat from RW. Shout out to you, RW, who writes, do you have any advice or old videos that you suggest on proper gun cleaning techniques? My dad died before teaching me, and I'm trying to learn. You don't have to clean guns as often as you'd think. That's the advice I would give you. It's pretty simple. If we're talking about a rifle, go get yourself a basic cleaning kit, which would be a cleaning rod, few patches, and a, oh, Mama, you sure are soft. Come on over. Come on. You can come over. We're almost, come on. Well, I'm not going to force you. Come on. Come on. You want me to pick you up? Don't bite me. Don't bite me. Goodness. Here, let's do this. Let's roll you over so you don't claw on me. Basic kit. Just get a basic kit, a patch, and a bottle of Hopies number 9. I know there's fast, high-speed stuff, but Hopies is tried and true. For your hunting rifles, if you're talking about hunting rifles, or even your shotguns, you should know how to take them apart forwards and backwards. If you have a 700 Remington, you should know how to take a dime and a vise and pull that bolt apart, get in there and clean that firing pin, and just so you know how it works, understand it. Same with an 870 or your 1100 or your Mossberg. It's an enjoyable process to be able to understand how everything works and how to take the barrel off and such. It's not difficult, and there's so much content out there on YouTube. All the videos, step by step, you can follow them. One great resource, if you want really well-produced videos on advanced and basic firearm maintenance, is Brownells. Brownells is a great company, been around for a long time. It's a good supplier. You can never go wrong with ordering stuff from Brownells. They're really good people over there. And they have a lot of great content on how to do a lot of the common things. If you don't have anything exotic, that will walk you through it, and different products that you should use, and it's a really good resource. As far as your handguns and stuff, if you're pro-ho, you should have only Gs, Glocks, right? And that's going to be very simple, where they have less than 40 parts in them. I don't remember. It's not very many, but you should be able to know that forwards and backwards. You should be able to pull that slide off with one hand. You should be able to get in and get those spring clip cups and get that firing pin out there. Understand how the 3 safeties work on the thing. Understand how to get the trigger group out. Push those 3 pins out. You don't need a lot of fancy stuff, but it's a fun thing to do in the evening. It's a whole lot better than watching television. So just get in there and start doing it. Watch those videos. I'd start with Brownells, and it's not a problem. Not a problem. Oh, mama, how are you doing? How much longer are you going to live? How old can a cat get? We figure she's got to be close to 18, maybe more. Yep. I know. Yeah, we need to be kind to our animals. You can tell all you need to know about a man is how he treats animals and kids. God will hold us accountable on how we treated these little creatures. All right, well, I think that's about it. That's about it, Mama. Let's put you away. You getting cat fur? Ugh. Disgusting. Getting cat fur all over me, all over my zesty drink. 2 hours and 3 minutes. It's just uncanny how these live streams seem to just kind of naturally come to a conclusion at 2 hours. It's just it's about the perfect time. Thank you, beloved, for hanging out with me. Thank you for all your support and your super chats. Do we have one more? Oh, we have the dire wolf rolling in at the midnight hour. Let's take care of the dire wolf. Shout out to you, dire wolf. Thank you for your generosity. Dire wolf 28 writes, "Greetings from Ontario, Canada. You have a great fan base here in southern Ontario. We are up here holding the line as hard as we can for men living in the dictatorship that is Canada." Boy, you said it, brother. Man, I don't follow your politics super close, but I do spend some time on TikTok because that's the only place to really get good news these days. And I see a lot of videos from your countrymen talking about what's going on with Trudeau and the gun grab that's currently taking place. And I have a basic understanding of what's going on, and it's deplorable. But I also am encouraged that many of your countrymen are standing up, starting to push back a little bit, especially those in the western provinces. This is my impression anyway. So fight the good fight. Don't once you let those go, they're gone for good. And Canada seems to be the test bed for America. We'll see how far they can push you, and if you guys will roll over, and then that's going to give them momentum and confidence to come after us. So in many ways, it seems like you guys are kind of holding the line right now. But there's very few of you up there that are doing it. The problem with our Canadian brothers is they're just too polite. You never ever met a Canadian that wasn't just the nicest guy. Well, that niceness, that kindness, that easygoing nature is being exploited by the demons and these world leaders. All right, beloved, thank you for watching. I appreciate you pay for these live streams with your time. That's the most valuable thing you have, and it's not lost on me. Thank you to the middlemen for helping moderate. I appreciate all the work behind the scenes. Tomorrow, Lord willing, we will be here at the same time, but we'll be remote. So it might be in my truck. I don't know. We'll see. See what I can find. But I'm getting up early, getting the sweet loaf packed up, and we'll make the long drive, get settled over there, and hopefully be in place by 12 o'clock. But I fully intend to have a fully functioning live stream tomorrow as well as Friday. We'll be helping out with the debate, but I don't see any reason why we won't be able to keep our promise here. Get yourself prepared for the fasting that's going to be coming mentally, just by thinking about it. Those of you who are going to join us will start next Wednesday from the time we wake up. So whatever time you wake up, and do it according, respond to your body too. Don't just set a hard time and live and die by it. If you've got health concerns or issues, you don't need to do that. This doesn't make one person better than the other. This is just those who can are going to do it. And prepare your mind for it. If you can kind of determine and resolve that this is going to happen, the same way with the shower, then it will be easier. There won't be a big surprise or a shock to your system. How you speak and manifest things, it just seems to happen. I don't know. There's things going on behind the scenes that we don't fully understand. But thinking in a particular direction will cause it to manifest, in my experience. If you can do 12 hours, do 12 hours. And there's also a benefit of just missing a couple meals, even if you just do what you can. So we'll start that, and we'll do that for a month. That'll be four Wednesdays. All right. Keep us in your prayers, beloved. May God bless you and your families. Don't be afraid. We are on the winning side. Arm yourself with the armor of God. Get in the scriptures. If you don't know what to do, don't know where to start, download the Daily Audio Bible app at the App Store, DAB. Get that on your phone. Jump in and get started. There's a lot of our fellow brothers that are doing that and receiving great benefits from it. It gives you some accountability, gives you some framework where to start, and some good lessons at the end that will be non-judgmental, non-preachy, that give you a little bit of insight, perspective, and what's going on. And it's a tremendous resource. It's entertaining. You can do it on the road if you don't have time. If you're busy and have obligations of family, you can do it, knock it out on your way to work. If you want to get through it quicker, you can go back and start, the archived versions, and you can do 2 a day. You can get through all 66 books in 6 months. Or if you just follow the course, you can get through in a year. And you'll have a very good understanding, well-rounded understanding of the 66 books as a whole in its entirety. I'll close with this. One thing to consider when you're listening, if you're an old veteran, an old man of the book, or if you're a newcomer, then when you're going through, always have this question in your mind: what does this story, this allegory, what am I reading, what does it tell me about the character of God? And you'll have, if you've read through many, many times but never done it with that intent, you'll come away with a very different perspective than you had before, I promise you. Thank you, beloved. May God bless you all. And Lord willing, we'll see you on tomorrow's live stream.